We're really excited to get your insights and advice on how to face so many challenges that may be holding small businesses back. And I really just want to get started, Lara, with you, because you're the president and CEO of Now, the fintech company that you founded with Stacey. But it's not the first business that both of you started together. Can you tell us about the previous companies that you've had and why you say the last one didn't just go out of business, it grew out of business? What happened there?
Absolutely, Sharon. Stacey and I started, our first company was called Insomnia, largely because we would stay awake thinking about the problems that everyone else was worried about. And so we started a consulting company that helped people solve impossible problems. And that then led to a company called Nourish, which was a patented spill-proof bottled water for children, because I had become a mother and the frustration of people handing my child sugary drinks and things like juice boxes that spilled everywhere had just become too much. And so Stacey and I decided to create a healthy alternative that was spill-proof. It was growing that business that made us realize that more businesses grow out of business than go out of business, because as we got larger and larger customers with larger and larger orders, they didn't pay us with a credit card. They wanted us to send the product and then send an invoice that said net 30 or net 60 or net 90, and probably should have said net pay us when you feel like it. And it was waiting on those invoices to pay that constrained our ability to grow the company. And that led to creating our current business Now.
Well, it's such a difficult time for so many businesses right now, with so many of the currents that are affecting them, namely rising prices. Waiting 30, 60, 90 days to get paid is really not an option. You know, in this current economic environment, Stacey, small business owners may have to raise their prices just to stay in business. So how do they convey the challenges that they're facing to their customers, or should they, in order to keep that connection with them to always keep the customer happy?
One of the lessons that Lara and I learned, Sharon, is transparency is key. You have to trust that your customer wants to be successful with you, and that means you should tell them what's going on. We started our business during the credit crunch, and one of the reasons we launched Now is that the Small Business Credit Initiative was designed to say that there are going to be moments of compression in our economy, and we have to do more to make it through. For a lot of small businesses, that compression happens every day. It doesn't ebb and flow with the markets. It ebbs and flows with whether or not the people around them can afford to be a part of the economy with them. And so it's important that we have leaders and small business owners, and even better when they are one and the same, who can talk honestly and frankly about here's why we're raising prices. If we get opportunities to lower those prices, we will. If we can find ways to give you incentives, we will. But passing on pricing without passing on information is a recipe for disaster. Instead, be really clear about what's happening and why, and don't overcorrect. I know there are a number of businesses out there right now that see an opportunity to inch it up. You know, if inflation's up 2, they're going to go up 5. Make certain that you're doing enough to stay afloat and to keep moving forward, but don't do so much that you push your customers out the door and they never come back.
Absolutely. And when you're trying to figure out how much to raise prices, you really have to have a really strong handle on what your financials are. And I think that's such an important part of the business for many small businesses. But cash flow is key. Cash flow is critical. And a lot of businesses don't have a handle on that, Stacey. How does Now, and why did you create Now to make sure that businesses had a better handle on that?
Well, as Lara pointed out, when we created Now, it was our third iteration. And in each of our businesses, I served as our COO. I'm very good at taking down the numbers and knowing who owes us what. The challenge was making sure those who owed us could pay us or would pay us. But what I found so often when I talk to other small business owners, and I found this as a legislator, is that too many people don't understand the finances. Understanding finances doesn't mean you actually have all the resources you need, but you make smarter decisions when you actually investigate how the processes work. When we understood the net 30 really meant net 60 and net 90, and it wasn't simply about us, it was simply how the market worked, we were able to start a new business that really tried to correct for that. So on the individual level, for a lot of small businesses, make sure you know what you need to know. Yes, you're going to have an accountant. Yes, you'll have a bookkeeper eventually. Sometimes you're all of those things, but never have anyone who works for you know more about your business than you do. Even if you aren't going to become an expert, make certain that you're conversant. And once you know something, make sure you're double checking. There is no shame in asking questions, and there's absolutely no shame in expanding your capacity. I know in one of the earlier segments, there was a conversation about upskilling. Small business owners constantly need to upskill, but our most fundamental skill is knowing how money comes in, knowing how money goes out, and knowing where money can come from.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of what you're saying in terms of there's no shame in it, but there is a lot of shame out there for a lot of women who are in business. And Lara, they're often thought they have to be fearless. But the reality is there's a lot of self-doubt. You know, how do you overcome that, especially when you've already experienced having a business that's failed?
Yeah, Sharon, it's such a great question, and I think it's a challenge that most entrepreneurs face at some point in their career. It's very lonely when you're the one making decisions, and I think that one of the things Stacey and I discovered was having a business partner that was complementary but didn't think exactly the same was an incredible gift in that regard. Because there were times when I would question, was I making the right decision? Did I know enough? Was I smart enough? And Stacey was always there to say, well, let's look at it differently. And likewise, there were times when Stacey would be grappling with something in her area of expertise, and she would ask me a question. So, you know, find someone. It can be a business partner if you're lucky enough to find someone like I was able to find Stacey. It could also be that you create your own personal board of directors. And that's very different than a mentor. A mentor is someone that's going to pat you on the back when things aren't going well. But a personal board of directors should be a group of people that are tasked with being honest with you and pointing out when sometimes your thinking is incongruent with your goals. So I think if you can surround yourself with people who don't think exactly like you and can be a safe place to ask questions but also challenge, then you build your own confidence and use that confidence as a stepping stone.
And they have to be able to explain things to you too, right, Lara? I mean, it's not just that they have the bookkeeping, they have the accounting, and you don't need to learn anything about it because you got someone to handle that, right? You need to be able to understand it as well.
That is absolutely correct. And what I always tell people is very few people start a business because they have a passion for finance and accounting, unless you start a CPA firm, in which case I hope you like it. But find someone who understands it. But just as importantly, make sure that person has the skill to explain it to you in normal human speak, non-finance terms. If they cannot do that, they are not the right person, and it doesn't matter how smart they are. You have to be able to communicate so that you as the founder, as the owner, can make the basic decisions that are required for your company to stay on track with its strategy.
Yeah, you know, Stacey, you are so fortunate to have a business partner that obviously gets you. You're obviously friends, but keeping that partnership going, it's not always easy for a lot of partners. There's, particularly now with the pandemic, there's uncertainty around inflation, the current economic environment. It's really challenging. And you say that you and Lara have a set of rules about what you expect from one another as business partners. How does that help your partnership actually work?
Lara and I are very different in a number of ways. We are friends, but one of the realities is we're not best friends. And the reason that's important is that gives us space to be incredibly honest, but it also gives us space to not be in each other's lives every minute of the day. And I think that is incredibly important as a small business owner, because if you are waking up, working, and going to bed talking to the same person, it is going to cloud your mind and it creates an echo chamber. Number two, we both completely believe that family comes first. Our families look different, our obligations are different, but we always put family and life first. What that meant was that when I had a crisis or when Lara had a need, when Connor needed to do something, that we didn't have to argue over whose responsibility it was. We had a common belief that we stepped in and took care of things because we knew that our partner would do it for us. The third responsibility is that we didn't work with jerks. And this was important. Because sometimes we are driven to make the money, but we hate the work. And there's nothing more guaranteed to sap your energy and fracture your partnership than an outside force that makes you question your values. Lara and I don't have the exact same political belief systems, but we have the same moral core. And that's really what matters. We did not work for people or with people who made us question our values. We didn't do things that we thought were inappropriate. And it's hard sometimes to turn away a big contract or to walk away from an opportunity because you're like, well, we could just look the other way once. One thing that I respect so much about Lara and that I know has tied us together is that we never look the other way. We confront our issues head on, especially when those issues are with one another. When we've disagreed, we have those discussions, because I think the most important piece of a partnership of any kind is honesty. You can't solve problems you won't talk about. And if you're leaning on your own understanding, you are limiting your set of information. And so for us, it's always been about being honest, being forthright, and always respecting the fact that business is a part of who we are. It's not all of who we are.
Yeah, Lara, you and Stacey in the book talk about honesty and transparency and how important that is. And as Stacey mentioned, you also have different ways of thinking about politics. I mean, you have stated in the book that you have been a Republican appointee. Stacey, of course, running as a Democrat for governor of Georgia. How do you actually deal with differences that you may have in your political beliefs as you're running your business? Does it ever come up, and how do you deal with it?
Well, Sharon, it's interesting. People always ask the question, how do you deal with it? As if it's a challenge. Stacey and I have chosen for our differences to be our superpower. It's actually a positive. And I think the way that we're able to do that is that we always approach a topic with curiosity first and criticalness second. And what I mean by that is that when one of us shares a perspective or a point of view, rather than immediately jumping to criticism or judgment, we initially ask ourselves, what can we be curious about? What can we learn from that? And I think the second thing that helps us is that we are always laser focused on our goal. And that goal is about impact. If you can stay focused on the impact that you're having and the goal that you're trying to achieve, 99.9% of the time, we agree on the outcome. How we would go about getting there is very different. But as long as your focus is the outcome and the impact, different approaches are not only okay, they're incredibly positive because they lead to innovation.
Yeah, Lara and Stacey, I want to ask you for the last question, something that's a really tough question for a lot of entrepreneurs to deal with. When you're looking at the outcome, when you're saying this is not exactly how I thought this business was going to go, when do you know that it's time to throw in the towel? When should you exit your business? Lara?
So, it's interesting. I think that when you think about an exit, whether it's the exit you wanted or an exit that you didn't intend, the real focus is on again, what was the impact? Because a business can have impact even if the exit is not what you intended. Nourish did not go where we intended it to go. We had visions of, building the next world-class global beverage company. But what it did is it led us to Now Account, because it allowed us to experience a problem that could have been viewed as, oh my gosh, the business is failing, we're gonna throw in the towel. But what we did instead was say, interesting, why is this business failing? And why is it that every other business has this same challenge and are given the exact same solutions, right? Go get a loan, go try factoring. What if there's a better way? So I think oftentimes when you're faced with, is it time to, as you said, throw in the towel, the real question is not what you're throwing down, it's what are you picking up? And I think one of the most important things to remember is when you change direction like that, we love to use the word pivot, but most people don't even know what a pivot means. A pivot doesn't mean change direction. A pivot means that you are changing direction around a fulcrum pivot point that is fixed. That's your DNA, that's your moral focus, that's your compass. So if you can know what your point of non-movement is, then changing direction to go after a new opportunity or support a new market need is really a positive in the face of throwing in that towel.
Yeah, Stacey, let me follow up on that with you, because as Lara's talking about, have your moral focus, have your compass. A lot of business owners in this climate are wondering, do I take a stand on a political or social issue? I don't want to lose customers. I don't want it to jeopardize my business. How do you think about that in terms of your business initiative, your business focus, when there's a political issue that you really do want to take a stand on?
It's important to remember that you enter, especially small businesses, we enter the world as citizens. We don't divorce ourselves from who we are when we open our doors, but we have to bring all of who we are, and we have to decide whether we want customers who bring all of who they are. There are some fundamental issues in our society that really do require our conversation. It requires that as small business owners, I mean, in Georgia, 1.1 million small business owners. We know that when you are making those choices about where you're going to stand, what your pivot point is going to be, you have to decide, are you willing to lose business to gain and to secure this value that you hold to be true? The answer shouldn't always be yes. We should be really selective about the things we're willing to tell other people no about, or the way we're willing to impose our belief systems. But there are some things that are so fundamental to who we are and our ability to operate that our customers need to know it about us. But the challenge is not, do you tell the truth? It is, you have to be willing to accept the consequences of that truth. My belief across the board is that you learn your lessons, not your losses. But the corollary to that is that you tell your truth, but you need to know when the truth is important and making certain that you know what you believe and why you believe it. Reflective, or more importantly, basically performative values mean nothing to me. You shouldn't be performing values because you think that's what people want to see from you. It should be because you know you can't meet your own internal compass. As Lara put it, your moral compass. You can't be respectful of your moral core if you don't speak out. And that is why during times of crisis, that is why during every major movement in this country, business has had to stand up, whether it was during the civil rights movement or women's rights movement or the LGBTQ movement. When we stand up, it's because we recognize that who we are is being eroded by our desire to make money. We should want to make money. I believe in capitalism, but I also believe in compassion, and I believe in my citizenship. And that's the equation that is the most important.
Lara, you agree with your business partner on that one?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that, some businesses are created with a purpose as part of their DNA, and it's part of everything that they do. I think the other thing, though, that you have to remember is that most businesses, and in our case, Now Account, we serve a beautifully diverse array of clients, and we have a beautifully diverse array of employees, and we have a beautifully diverse array of investors. And so we have to make sure that we are true to what the business was built on and not necessarily use that business to go out and talk about other things. We are very laser focused on leveling the playing field for small businesses and helping them serve the role in the economy that they are made to serve, which is to be the engine of our economy.
Absolutely, making sure they can level up. Lara Hodgson and Stacey Abrams, it has been a pleasure to talk to you and get your insights and advice, and we really appreciate you helping small business owners figure out how to face some of those challenges that may be holding their business back. For now.